Hello Science 30 and welcome to our video on vessels and pathways. Today our objective is to describe and learn about the structures and functions of the vessels and how it helps blood flow from the heart to the body and then back to the heart, or from the heart to the lungs and back to the heart. It's really important that we map this and know and understand the way blood flows, but we need to understand what carries it. So today the goal for you is that you can describe the flow of blood through the body. You can identify the different vessels of the heart, not the heart, sorry, the different vessels of the body and what each of them do. You also have to be able to describe the three different types of pathways blood will take through the body. We're going to start there with the pathways of the circulatory system. So the very first step we're going to look at is what way does blood pass through from our heart to our lungs. So that's this one right here. We call this the pulmonary system. So what it does is it takes oxygen poor blood, so really blood that has very little oxygen in it, and it transfers it to the lungs. And when the blood reaches the lungs, oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged by diffusion between the capillaries or the capillaries, which are just really tiny vessels we're going to talk about. And once that's done, then we now have oxygen-rich blood, and it's going to return to the left side of our heart through something called the pulmonary veins. Every bolded word you see here for the note package you have, that is what you're going to put in the pulmonary section of your notes. The systemic part of your body is where you take oxygen-rich blood from the left side of your heart and you're going to pass it to the body tissues. Here at the body tissues, oxygen and nutrients move from your blood into the tissues, and then you take the waste products such as carbon dioxide and move it out of the tissues into the blood. So again, think of the heart as the main stopping point. This is when we're saying all the blood from the heart is going to the body. Now, lastly, because the heart is very important, it actually has its own dedicated system. So this provides blood to the muscles of the tissue of the heart. So there are the three pathways that are really important, and you will hear them referred to as we go through this course on circulatory and as we talk about different vessels. So that's where we're going to start next, is talking about different vessels. So in your notes, we're going to start at arteries. Arteries are really big vessels, and they carry blood away from the heart. Away, artery, away. You need to know that the role of arteries is to take blood away from your heart. Now, the other important part is you need to know what the structure would look like. You have a variety of different pictures in your notes to look at, but essentially if you were to look at an artery, it's a very thick vessel because the walls are made out of elastic, and their job is to stretch to control the flow of blood to all the different tissues. Now, why is this important? Why is that stretching important, or that idea of elastic wall? Well, the reason is because if you've ever taken your pulse or have tried to take your pulse, it's actually you feeling the elastic wall of your artery expanding during a contraction, so it's expanding when your heart contracts, and then it snaps back in place when your heart is in between contractions. So your pulse is actually you feeling blood being pumped from your heart through your arteries, and which is really key, because then we can count our pulse to see how fast our heart is beating. Now, arteries are the biggest vessel we have, and arteries are connected to smaller arteries. So you do not have this picture in your note, but you do have a section that says arterioles. So if we're looking at this diagram, you will see that from the heart there is an artery right here. Now, this artery is really big, and these things down here, which are called capillaries, are really tiny. We just said that that's where all of our nutrients are exchanged. So we need a connector piece, and that connector piece is known as our arterioles. Arterioles are smaller arteries, and their role is to connect blood from the heart, so from the artery, to the capillaries. So in your space in your notes, you're going to write that that is what an arteriole does. Next, we're going to look at another vessel in our body that's very important, which are veins. Now, veins have the role of carrying blood back towards the heart. Okay, so they're going to work against gravity, which means that they have to have some pretty special structures in order to go against gravity. So they are much thinner than an artery looks like. They look bigger under a microscope just because they don't have those really thick walls. But the key thing to a vein is that they have one-way valves, meaning that nothing should flow backwards, everything should flow upwards, and that is the way it stops blood from going backwards again with gravity. We want it to go back up towards our heart. So if you think of blood traveling from the bottom of your legs up to your heart, it's working against gravity. Now, veins are bigger as well, and so they also need a connector. So you'll notice on your notes you have a space for something called venules. So we already talked about the artery and arterioles being the way to connect blood from the heart to capillaries down here. But we need to connect, how do we take blood from capillaries back up to the heart to exchange waste? So that is where the venules come in play. They're tiny, smaller than veins, and their job is to connect the vein over to the capillaries so that you can actually pass blood back up to the heart. So under the venules section of your notes, you're going to write that venules connect capillaries to veins and may take the blood back to the heart. Now, that being said, we talked about the connector pieces, but what is this thing that we call capillaries? Okay, so what blood vessels actually join arteries to veins? Because you have to remember, arteries bring blood away from your heart and veins have to take it back towards the heart. And they're really big. So what are the things that allow for us to exchange gases? That is capillaries. Okay, so capillaries are a network of really tiny vessels that connect the two that allow for nutrient exchange. So they have blood flowing through them in a space called a capillary bed. And it is not always constant, but you do have a lot of blood flowing through that at a time. But the thing is that they are so small that they only have one, like a single file line of blood passing through them. Okay, now with the blood flow in the capillary beds, it's not always constant. You can actually have blood shunted directly from an artery to a vein, and they don't necessarily have to go through a capillary. There are actions like sphincters that deal with that. Okay. But blood will also bypass capillary beds when needed. For example, if you don't need to put blood to a certain part of your body at that time, it might not pass through capillaries. So just below it says, please draw a simple flow chart of blood through the body. So that's what we're going to do next. You do not need to draw this entire diagram, but the idea is that we want to draw the idea of artery to arterial, to capillary, to venule, to vein. So we want to write down all of these bigger words and then draw an arrow showing that blood moves from the artery to the arterial, to the capillary, to the venule, to the vein. Now, you may be more of a visual person, in which case just draw the structures you see here, or you can sketch this little piece here as well. It's up to you, but it's very important that you know blood flows away from the heart and back to the heart using this particular pathway. All right. If you have any questions, please let me know and have a great day.